Mark Reynolds had always lived by control. At 45, the ex-Marine turned Chicago tech CEO ran Vertex Solutions with the precision of a drill sergeant. His father, a stoic factory worker who'd clawed his way to modest wealth, drilled one lesson into him: emotions are liabilities. Mark absorbed it silently, building a life of discipline and success. His penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, his sleek office in the Loop, his tailored suits. They were all proof he'd mastered the game. But nothing prepared him for the storm waiting at home. It was a humid July evening in 2025 when Mark decided to surprise his wife, Lauren, with plans for their 20th wedding anniversary. Lauren, 43, had been a spark of warmth when they married at 25, her laughter lighting up their early years. Their daughter, Ava, now 22 and a college senior, was their pride, though her entitlement grated on Mark's nerves. He'd poured everything into his family, trying to be the husband and father his own dad never was, even if his father's cold pragmatism lingered in him like a shadow. Driving through Chicago's bustling streets, Mark's mind buzzed with ideas. A weekend in Napa, maybe a quiet dinner at their favorite rooftop restaurant. The city pulsed with life, neon lights reflecting off the glass towers. But the heat was oppressive, the air thick with summer's weight. He pulled into their upscale Lincoln Park driveway, the modern house a testament to his success. Briefcase in hand, he stepped inside, expecting a warm greeting. Instead, he found Lauren and Ava in the kitchen, their faces set like they'd rehearsed a script. "Mark, we need to talk," Lauren said, her voice steady but edged with something unfamiliar. Resolve, maybe defiance. She stood by the marble counter, her auburn hair pulled back, her green eyes avoiding his. Ava, perched at the table, clutched her phone, her expression a mix of excitement and challenge. Mark set his briefcase down, forcing a casual tone. "What's going on?" He glanced between them, his gut tightening. The kitchen, usually alive with the hum of family life, felt like a courtroom. Lauren gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Mark complied, his posture calm but alert, a habit from his Marine days. Assess, strategize, act. Ava leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Dad, Mom wants an open marriage. It's modern. Love isn't about exclusivity anymore. Everyone's doing it." The words hit like a grenade. Mark's pulse quickened, but his face remained stone. "An open marriage?" he repeated, locking eyes with Lauren. She nodded, her fingers twisting a napkin. "I'm bored, Mark. I've met someone, David Carter, the restaurateur who owns that new place on Michigan Avenue. I want to explore this." Mark's mind raced. David Carter, charming, mid-40s, owner of Carter's Bistro, a hotspot for Chicago's elite. Mark had hosted clients there, shaking David's hand over steak tartare, never suspecting the man would target his wife. The betrayal stung, but Ava's enthusiasm cut deeper. "You're okay with this?" he asked his daughter, his voice low. Ava shrugged, tossing her blonde hair. "Totally. You're so old school, Dad. Physical stuff doesn't matter. It's about trust. If you love Mom, you'll let her be free." Her tone was almost gleeful, like she was schooling him on TikTok trends. Mark's stomach burned, a quiet rage simmering, but he kept his cool, tapping his fingers on the table, an old habit from his Ranger days. "Count. Breathe. Don't break." "Lauren," he said, turning to his wife, "is this what you want? To date other men while I what? Sit here and wave you off?" Lauren bit her lip, her gaze flickering. "It's not about you, Mark. I just need something new. I'm not unhappy, just restless. David's different. Exciting." Her words were a blade, casual yet cutting, as if 20 years meant nothing. Ava chimed in, smirking. "Come on, Dad, you could date too. Get on an app or something. It's not a big deal." She giggled like Mark was a punchline. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, but Mark's face stayed neutral. "Is there someone specific?" he asked, his voice dangerously even. "You said David. Already planned this out." Lauren hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, David. We've been talking. He's interested." Ava clapped her hands. "Oh my God, Mom. He's so charming. Great pick." Something twisted in Mark's chest. A mix of betrayal and cold clarity. He'd entertained clients at David's restaurant, shared laughs, clinked glasses. Now the man was after his wife, and his daughter was cheering it on. He rose, walked to the sink, and turned on the tap, letting the water's hum fill the silence. Lauren and Ava exchanged glances, puzzled by his calm. "This is no small thing, Lauren," he said finally, turning off the faucet. "You understand that, right?" She nodded, her jaw set. "I've never been clearer." Mark exhaled, his mind clicking into strategy mode. "Fine. I'm in." Their eyes widened, Ava's mouth curling into a smirk, like she'd won. "Really? You'll agree to an open marriage?" "Yes," Mark said, his voice steady. "On one condition." Ava's smirk faded. "There can't be conditions, Dad. That's controlling." Mark cut her off, his gaze hard. "I make the rules. This house, my business, mine, thanks to the prenup your mother signed 20 years ago at my father's insistence. You want your open arrangement? Fine. But I set the ground rules for my property. If you don't like it, you're free to find another house, another life." "Understood." Lauren's eyes flickered with apprehension. Ava laughed, but it was nervous. "Dad, it's Mom's house too, legally." Lauren raised a hand. "Stop, Ava. He's right. The prenup, the house is his." Her voice was low, uncertain. Ava's bravado cracked, her eyes darting between them. Mark didn't answer. He walked out, leaving them to stew in the weight of his words. Later that night, he overheard them whispering in the kitchen. Old habits, eavesdropping from his military days, died hard. Ava's voice was smug. "He's bluffing, Mom. He'd never kick you out. You're his world." Lauren's reply was soft, wary. "You don't know your father, Ava. He can be ruthless when pushed. Did I ever tell you about his time in Afghanistan? I only know half of it, and that's enough to scare me." Ava scoffed. "He's just a grumpy old man. He'll get over it." Mark retreated upstairs, a cold resolve settling in. They had no idea who they were dealing with. In Afghanistan, he'd learned to bury emotions, to act with precision under pressure. He tried to leave that darkness behind, but they'd lit a fuse. The game was on. The next morning, Mark drove to the office of Tom Bradley, his lawyer since their Northwestern days. Tom, sharp as a blade despite his frat boy grin, leaned back in his leather chair. "An open marriage? Damn, Mark. Why not just divorce her?" "Too easy," Mark said, his voice low. "I want them to feel the weight of this. I'm not rolling over." He outlined his plan, a postnup to lock Lauren's claims, protect his assets, and set strict terms: no lovers in his home, monthly STD tests, no alimony if she left. If she wanted freedom, it'd come at a cost. Tom whistled. "You're colder than your old man." "All right, let's make it ironclad." Mark nodded, his father's voice echoing in his head, "Protect what's yours." Lauren and Ava thought they could rewrite the rules. They were about to learn what happens when you challenge a man who's been to war. Mark Reynolds woke with a fire in his chest, the sting of Lauren's betrayal fueling his resolve. By 7 a.m. he was in his Lincoln Park office, the Chicago skyline a glittering backdrop. He flipped a photo of his family face down, no room for sentiment. He called Tom Bradley, his lawyer. "Meet me at 9. We're locking this down." Tom's office smelled of coffee and leather. "Lauren wants to play free bird with David Carter, and Ava's her cheerleader," Tom said, grinning. "Your move." Mark slid a notepad over. "Postnup. No alimony, no house, no business if she leaves. Her dating's on her dime. Monthly STD tests. No lovers in my home." Tom whistled. "Colder than Lake Michigan. Why not divorce?" "Too easy," Mark said, eyes hard. "She'll feel this." The postnup was drafted by noon, a fortress of terms. Mark had another move: Emily Carter, David's 22-year-old daughter. He'd met her at events, her disdain for her father was clear. He messaged her, "Join me at a veterans gala Friday?" She agreed, eager to rebel. At the gala, Emily shone in emerald, turning heads. "Dad would lose it," she smirked. They mingled, whispers trailing them. Mark's phone buzzed. "Ava, furious, you're with Emily Carter? WTF?" He ignored it. At home, Ava exploded. "She's my age." Mark's reply was ice. "You said age doesn't matter. Or is that just for Mom?" Lauren stayed silent, her unease palpable. The next day, Mark signed the postnup with Tom. "You're playing with fire," Tom warned. "Let it burn," Mark said. Lauren and Ava had started this war. He was ready to win. Mark Reynolds stood at his office window, the Chicago skyline a jagged silhouette against a stormy July sky. A week had passed since the gala and the city buzzed with whispers about his date with Emily Carter, daughter of Lauren's lover, David. Social media posts from the event, Mark in a tux, Emily radiant in emerald, had spread like wildfire among Chicago's elite. Mark didn't care about the gossip. He cared about the message. Lauren and Ava thought they could humiliate him. They were wrong. At home, the air was thick with tension. Lauren barely spoke, her eyes darting nervously when Mark entered a room. Ava, meanwhile, was a storm of defiance, her texts a mix of outrage and mockery. "You're making a fool of us, Dad," she'd written after the gala. "Emily Carter? Really?" Mark ignored her, focusing on his next move. The postnup was signed, locking Lauren into his terms. No alimony, no house, no business if she left. Her fling with David Carter was her choice, but Mark was done footing the bill for betrayal. He leaned back in his chair, glancing at his phone. A new message from Emily. "Dinner tonight? My dad's been dodging my calls. Think he's pissed about us." Mark smirked. "Good. Let David squirm." He replied, 7 p.m., the signature room. "Wear something bold." Emily was more than a pawn in this game. She was sharp, ambitious, and unafraid to challenge her father's ego. Their connection, initially a calculated move, was growing into something real. She understood betrayal, having watched David abandon her mother years ago. Mark felt a spark with her he hadn't felt with Lauren in a decade. That evening, at the signature room atop the Hancock Center, Mark and Emily sat by a window, the city's lights sprawling below. Emily, in a crimson dress, sipped wine and laughed. "Dad's losing it," she said, her eyes gleaming. "He saw the gala photos and called me a traitor. Said I'm consorting with the enemy." Mark raised his glass. "To enemies, then." They clinked, but his mind was on Lauren. She'd been spotted with David at his bistro, their public displays fueling the gossip mill. Mark's colleagues had started whispering at board meetings, their glances a mix of pity and amusement. He shut them down with a look, but the sting lingered. Back home, Ava was waiting in the living room, her arms crossed, face flushed with anger. "You're embarrassing us," she snapped as Mark loosened his tie. "Parading around with Emily Carter? Everyone's talking about it. Mom's a wreck." Mark's voice was cold. "Your mother chose David. You cheered her on. Now you're mad I'm playing by your rules." He stepped closer, his marine-honed intensity making Ava flinch. "You said age doesn't matter, Ava. Or is that only when it suits you?" She huffed, tossing her hair. "You're twisting everything. Mom's trying to be free and you're making it a circus. Just stop. Stop." Mark's laugh was sharp. "You wanted modern. This is modern. Deal with it." Lauren appeared in the doorway, her face pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Mark, can we talk?" "Alone." Ava hesitated, then stormed upstairs, slamming her door. Lauren sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "This isn't what I wanted," she said softly. "David's intense, but it's not worth this. People are staring, whispering. I feel like a fool." Mark sat across from her, his gaze steady. "You wanted freedom, Lauren. You got it. Signed the postnup and everything. What's the problem?" Her voice cracked. "The problem is you with Emily. She's Ava's age, Mark. It's humiliating. And David, he's pulling back. Canceling plans. I think he's playing me." Mark leaned forward, his tone low. "Sounds like you picked a winner. Did you think this would be easy? That I'd sit home while you and Ava laughed at me?" Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake. Can't we just pause this? Go back to how it was?" "No," Mark said, standing. "You opened this door. It stays open." He walked out, leaving her crumpled on the couch. Her plea was genuine, but so was his resolve. She'd learn what betrayal cost. The next morning, Mark got a call from Tom Bradley. "Got some dirt," Tom said, his voice low. "David Carter's not just a charmer. He's been borrowing money from clients, promising stakes in a new restaurant that doesn't exist." Lauren's name came up. She loaned him $10,000 last week. Mark's grip tightened on the phone. "She what?" "Check your joint account," Tom said. "She's been funneling money to him. Thought you should know." Mark pulled up their bank app. Sure enough, a $10,000 transfer to an account labeled Carter Ventures. His blood boiled. Lauren hadn't just betrayed him emotionally, she was bankrolling David's schemes. He called Emily, who confirmed the rumor. "Dad's always been a con," she said, her voice bitter. "He burned my mom the same way." "I'm sorry, Mark." "Don't be," he said. "This is leverage." That night, Mark confronted Lauren in the kitchen. She was sipping tea, her hands unsteady. "You gave David $10,000, he said, his voice like steel. "Care to explain?" Lauren froze, her cup clattering to the counter. "It was an investment. He said his new restaurant." "It's a scam," Mark cut in. "There's no restaurant. He's been fleecing clients for months." "You didn't just cheat, Lauren, you're funding his lies with our money." Her face crumpled. I didn't know. He promised a. Save it, Mark said. You signed the postnup. Your investments are on you. And if you're smart, you'll get that money back before he disappears. Lauren's voice broke. Mark, please? I'll end it with him. Just help me. He shook his head. You wanted this game. Play it. Ava, who'd been eavesdropping, burst in. You're heartless, Dad. Mom's falling apart and you're gloating with Emily? I even asked David for help with my car payment. He ghosted me too. Mark's eyes narrowed. You went to David? Behind your mother's back. Ava's defiance faltered, her cheeks flushing. I thought he'd help. I'm drowning in bills and you cut me off. You made your choice, Mark said, his voice low. You both did. He walked out, the weight of their betrayal fueling his resolve. They'd learned the hard way, trust was a two-way street, and they'd burned the bridge. Mark Reynolds sat in his office, the Chicago skyline shrouded in late August drizzle. 3 weeks had passed since he'd exposed Lauren's $10,000 blunder to David Carter's non-existent restaurant venture. The postnup had her cornered, no alimony, no house, no stake in Vertex Solutions if she walked away. Lauren's fling with David was unraveling, and Ava was sinking under the weight of her own choices. Mark felt no triumph, only a cold satisfaction. They'd underestimated him, and now reality was closing in. Lauren had become a shadow at home. She drifted through the Lincoln Park house, her once vibrant energy dulled by stress. Dark circles framed her eyes, and her hands trembled as she poured coffee. Mark noticed but said nothing. She'd made her bed, let her lie in it. Ava, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of desperation. Her car lease had lapsed, her credit card bills were piling up, and her part-time barista job barely covered her phone plan. She texted Mark daily, alternating between pleas and insults. Dad, I need help. You can't just cut me off. Followed by you're a selfish jerk. Mark deleted them without reply. He met Emily Carter for lunch at a quiet cafe in River North. Her dark eyes sparkled as she recounted her latest design project, but her tone shifted when Mark mentioned David. He's gone dark, she said, stirring her latte. Skipped town from what I hear. His bistro's barely staffed and creditors are circling. He burned a lot of people, not just Lauren. Mark's jaw tightened. Your father's a con. Lauren's out $10,000 and Ava thought he'd bail her out too. Emily's brows shot up. Ava asked him for money? That's bold. She paused, then leaned in. I'm sorry, Mark. This mess, it's not your fault. Dad's always been a user. I learned that when he left Mom. Mark nodded, a flicker of warmth easing his guarded heart. Emily wasn't just a rebellion anymore, she was an ally, someone who saw through the chaos. Their connection deepened, rooted in mutual scars. Let's focus on us, he said, squeezing her hand. Not them. Back at home, the tension boiled over. Mark walked into the living room to find Lauren pacing, her phone clutched tightly. Ava sat on the couch, scrolling furiously, her face flushed. Mark, Lauren said, her voice raw. We need to talk. Now. He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. Go ahead. Lauren's eyes were red, her voice shaking. David's gone. Vanished. The $10,000, I'll never get it back. He lied about everything, the restaurant, his feelings. I was an idiot. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I'm done with this open marriage. I want it closed. I want us back. Mark's expression didn't waver. You signed the postnup, Lauren. You wanted freedom. You got it. Why should I trust you now? Ava jumped up, her voice sharp. Dad, stop. Mom's a mess. She made a mistake. You're punishing her with Emily parading her around like a trophy. It's cruel. Mark's gaze turned to Ava, cold and unyielding. Cruel? You cheered when your mother wanted to explore with David. You went behind her back, begging him for money. And now you're both surprised it blew up. He stepped closer, his marine-trained intensity making Ava shrink. You don't get to rewrite the rules when they stop suiting you. Lauren's voice cracked. Mark, please? I'm begging. I can't handle this, losing the money, the gossip, you with Emily. She's Ava's age. It's killing me. You open this door, Mark said, his tone flat. You don't get to close it because it's inconvenient. The postnup stands. You want out? File for divorce. But you know the terms, nothing's yours. Ava's eyes blazed. You're destroying us. I can't pay my bills, Mom's broke, and you're acting like some heartless tyrant. I took a second job at a diner, Dad. A diner. My friends are laughing at me. Mark's lips twitched, almost a smile. Good. Maybe you'll learn what it means to stand on your own. You wanted to play adult, Ava? Welcome to the real world. Lauren stood, her voice desperate. Mark, I know I messed up. But this isn't just about me. Ava's struggling. She's your daughter. She's an adult who chose her side, Mark said, turning away. You both did. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. I have a dinner with Emily. Don't wait up. Ava's shout followed him. You're a monster. The door slammed, punctuating the rift. The next day, Mark got a call from Tom Bradley. Lauren's lawyer reached out, Tom said. She's asking about divorce options. Sounds like she's cracking. Also, Ava's car got repossessed. She's blowing up her friends' phones, looking for a couch to crash on. Mark leaned back in his chair, staring at the skyline. Let them figure it out. They wanted this game. Tom chuckled. You're a cold bastard, Reynolds. But I get it. What's next? Keep an eye on Lauren's lawyer, Mark said. If she files, we enforce the postnup. No mercy. That evening, Mark met Emily at her apartment, a cozy loft in Wicker Park. They cooked pasta, laughing over wine, the tension of the day melting away. Emily shared a story about her mother's betrayal by David years ago, how he drained her savings and left her to raise Emily alone. I see him in the news, all charm and lies, she said, her voice soft. I'm glad you're not like him, Mark. He touched her cheek, a rare moment of vulnerability. I'm trying not to be. But they pushed me to a dark place. Emily nodded, her eyes steady. You're not the villain here. They made their choices. Mark felt a weight lift, her words grounding him. For the first time in weeks, he slept without dreams of Afghanistan, of the friend he'd lost to a traitor's lie. Emily was his anchor, and he wasn't letting go. 5 years had passed since the storm of betrayal tore through Mark Reynolds' life. Chicago's skyline still gleamed outside his Vertex Solutions office, but Mark was different, calmer, grounded. At 50, he'd stepped back from the daily grind, delegating to trusted managers to focus on what mattered, his new family. Emily Carter, now his wife, filled his days with warmth, and their 4-year-old son, Liam, brought a joy Mark hadn't known since Ava was small. The scars of Lauren and Ava's choices lingered, but Mark had built a new life from the ashes. The Lincoln Park house, once a battleground, was quiet now. Lauren had left 3 years ago, moving to her parents' home in California after the divorce. The postnup Mark had crafted with Tom Bradley held firm. She walked away with nothing but her personal savings, drained by David Carter's scam. Mark heard through mutual friends that she'd taken a job as a receptionist, a far cry from the glamorous life she'd chased. Her health had faltered under the stress of her choices, but she was alive, rebuilding in her own way. Mark felt a flicker of pity but no regret. She'd chosen her path. Ava, now 27, had clawed her way out of the chaos. After her car was repossessed and her credit cards maxed out, she'd taken a second job at a diner, then landed a paralegal position at a small law firm. She rented a modest apartment in Logan Square, slowly chipping away at her college loans. Mark hadn't spoken to her since she'd stormed out, calling him a monster. But one afternoon, he stopped by her firm's neighborhood cafe out of curiosity. Through the window, he saw her, a hair tied back, rushing between tables, her face tired but determined. She didn't notice him. For a moment, Mark felt a pang of pride. She was learning what he'd tried to teach her: actions have consequences. Mark's life with Emily was a stark contrast. Their wedding, a small ceremony in a Lake Michigan vineyard, had been simple but meaningful. Emily, now 27, was thriving as a graphic designer, her portfolio gaining traction with Chicago's top firms. She'd opened up about her father, David, whose bistro had shuttered after his scams were exposed. He'd fled to Miami, leaving a trail of debts and broken promises. Emily's resilience inspired Mark. She'd faced betrayal young, yet chose to build rather than destroy. One Sunday morning, Mark was in their Wicker Park loft, helping Liam sort colored pencils for a drawing of a rocket ship. Emily was outside, sipping coffee in the autumn sun. The phone rang, startling Mark. The caller ID showed Lauren's father, Richard. They hadn't spoken since the divorce. Mark answered, bracing himself. Mark, Richard said, his voice heavy. I thought you should know Lauren's in California, working, trying to start over. She's not the same. The stress, losing everything, it broke her spirit. I don't blame you, but I thought you'd want to know. Mark's throat tightened. I'm sorry she's struggling, he said, meaning it. Thanks for telling me. Richard sighed. She made mistakes. So did Ava. But they're paying for it. I hope you found some peace. I have, Mark said, glancing at Liam, who was meticulously coloring. They exchanged brief goodbyes, and the line went dead. Mark set the phone down, a swirl of emotions hitting him: pity for Lauren, relief for his own path, and a faint sadness for what could have been. But the past was gone, and he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Later that day, Mark and Emily took Liam to a park. As Liam ran toward the swings, Emily squeezed Mark's hand. You okay? She asked, sensing his quiet mood. He nodded, pulling her close. Just thinking about choices. Lauren and Ava, they had to learn the hard way. I almost lost myself in that fight. Emily's eyes softened. You didn't. You built this, Liam. That's what matters. Mark kissed her forehead, watching Liam laugh as he soared on the swing. In Afghanistan, he'd lost a friend to betrayal, a wound that shaped his distrust. Lauren and Ava had reopened it, but Emily and Liam had healed it. He wasn't the cold Marine anymore, nor the vengeful husband. He was a father, a partner, a man who'd chosen to move forward. A week later, Mark heard through a colleague that Ava had been promoted at her firm. She was paying off her loans, living frugally but independently. Part of him wanted to reach out to mend the rift, but he held back. She'd chosen her side years ago and some bridges stayed burned. Still, he was glad she was finding her way. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough. Mark returned home that evening, the loft glowing with warmth. Liam ran to him, holding up a drawing of a rocket blasting through stars. "Look, Daddy," he beamed. Mark knelt, ruffling his son's hair. "It's perfect, buddy. Show me more." As Emily joined them, smiling, Mark felt a weight lift. Lauren's betrayal, Ava's defiance, they'd pushed him to a dark place, but he'd emerged stronger. The game of trust was over, and Mark had won, not through revenge, but through accountability and a new beginning. He hugged his family, the Chicago skyline fading into dusk outside. This was his life now, and it was enough.